We've reached the fork in the road. They say the time has come for harder choices. They recommend more military force. Wanting additional information and time, the president sends Bundy to Vietnam for a personal review. While he's there, Viet Cong guerrillas attack a military barracks in Pleiku, killing 8 Americans and wounding scores of others. As LBJ orders immediate airstrikes against a handful of targets in the north, Bundy reviews the damage at Pleiku.
Before leaving for home, Mr. Bundy flew to the 8th Field Hospital to visit the men wounded in the guerrilla attack. 108 men were wounded, 79 of them seriously.
Bundy is stunned by the blood and suffering, and on the way home, he writes the president that without new U.S. action, defeat appears inevitable. On February 10th, he calls the president with more bad news.
Mr. President, we've had another bombing, as you may have heard.
No.
A barracks in a town called Bindia, and we don't yet have, Quy Nhon is the town. We don't yet have casualty reports except 21 wounded, but the whole building collapsed, so the chances are there'll be something more. We probably ought to be very careful that this is a U.S. barracks to tie into this enterprise something Vietnamese so that we don't get in a position that only white men get avenged.
I would tell Wheeler to have his group getting their recommendations together as best they can and considering every possible angle, not getting inflammatory or bombastic, but let's proceed coolly and thoroughly and promptly and adequately.
Right.
Johnson's top advisors unanimously urged the president to authorize the sustained bombing of North Vietnam. Hoping such raids might end the struggle quickly and prevent the need for committing more soldiers to a ground war, he gives the okay to Operation Rolling Thunder, which will pound the North Vietnamese for the next 3 years. Hardly has he issued the order than the government in Saigon falls yet again, and Viet Cong terrorists bomb the U.S. Embassy in Saigon.
It is all part of the carefully planned and continuing campaign of terror against both American and South Vietnamese civilians.
Nothing seems to be working. Soon after, the president approves 2 more Marine battalions for Vietnam. But when his top officials meet in Hawaii in April, they conclude bombing cannot do the job alone and ask for another 9 battalions. McNamara explains.
I think we can all be in agreement that we've got to do more to win in the South. I think the introduction of U.S. troops that will be involved will be agreed upon by the various parties.
What is their appraisal of the situation there? What do they think about all these statements about the Chinese coming in?
None of us feel that the Chinese are likely to come in the near term. They are reasonably optimistic that over the next 3 to 6 months, with additional U.S. combat troops in there, and there's still a little disagreement as to how many there should be ultimately, but no disagreement as to how many there should be in the next 90 or 120 days, they feel that they can sufficiently stiffen the South Vietnamese and strengthen their forces to show Hanoi that Hanoi cannot win in the South. It won't be that the South Vietnamese can win, but it'll be clear to Hanoi that Hanoi can't win. And this is one of the objectives we're striving for. Despite some of these favorable signs, there is in the background this very large Viet Cong buildup over the last several months and the concentration of Viet Cong strength in the center of the country, which could break out at any time and cause serious trouble to us. And they're very much afraid of some catastrophic loss at Bien Hoa or Da Nang or one of these areas. And it's to protect against that they now agree there should be some U.S. combat troops introduced.
Are we taking every precaution we ought to take against any unforeseen catastrophic...
I think so. This is one of the subjects we've discussed at great length today, and to avoid possible catastrophe at Bien Hoa, where we have a huge concentration of equipment and U.S. forces, and also at Da Nang, I think we would all recommend to you introduction of a brigade at Bien Hoa and several additional battalions at enclaves along the coast. This both to protect us against catastrophe and also to relieve some of the South Vietnamese and to allow some of our units to participate in counterinsurgency operations. And as a result of all this, show the North Vietnamese that they can't win in the South.
June 5th, 1965. More bad news. The Saigon government is again in crisis. The Viet Cong have launched a new offensive during the monsoon season, making it harder to defend ground forces from the air. A cable from the American ambassador, General Maxwell Taylor, is blunt. Quote, "It will probably be necessary to commit U.S. ground forces to action." An anxious president calls his Secretary of Defense.
What's happening in the fighting?
Well, we've had a very unhappy week. The losses have been extremely high. I would guess that in terms of killed, wounded, and missing in action, the total will be substantially in excess of 1,000. We've had several serious setbacks, including an attack on a district town by a Viet Cong battalion-sized force only 10 miles from Saigon. I think we're beginning to see the use of that Viet Cong reserve that we've all known was there but hadn't been utilized up to the present time.
Are you scheduled to get any more people in there anytime?
3 more battalions, combat battalions, are scheduled to go in mid-July. You've already approved that. That will make a total of 13 combat battalions. There are 10 there now, 3 to go in within the next 30 to 45 days. There are additional logistical personnel going in as well. The total today is on the order of, well, I suppose it's 49 or 50,000 today. So there'll be roughly 70,000 there sometime, I guess at the end of August.
For several weeks, the president has been depressed. He seems resigned to the inevitability of escalation. On June 8th, he calls Senate Majority Leader Mansfield, who has written to urge him not to bomb Hanoi, the capital of North Vietnam. His tone is weary, worried, and stressed.
I don't see exactly the medium for pulling out. Rusk doesn't know that I'm thinking this. McNamara doesn't know I'm thinking this. Bundy doesn't. I haven't talked to a human. I'm over here in bed. I just tried to take a nap, get going for my second day, and I couldn't. I just said I'd call you. But I think I'll say to the Congress that General Eisenhower thought we ought to go in here and do here what we in effect did in Greece and Turkey and so forth. President Kennedy thought we ought to do this. And he sent these people in here. And I have thought that we ought to stay there. But all of my military people tell me, and my economic people, that we cannot do this to the extent of the commitment we have now. It's got to be materially increased. And the outcome is not really predictable at the moment. Our 75,000 men are going to be in great danger unless they have 75,000 more. My judgment is, and I'm no military man at all, but I study it every day and every night, and I read the cables. I look back over what's happened in the last 2 years, or the last 4 really, and if they get 150, they'll have to have another 150, and then they'll have to have another 150. So the big question then is, what does the Congress want to do about it under these circumstances? I know what the military wants to do. I really know what I think Rusk and McNamara want to do, and Bundy, but I'm not sure, and I think I know what the country wants to do now, but I'm not sure that they want to do that 6 months from now. But unless you can guard what you're doing, you can't do anything. We can't build an airport, by God, much less build an REA line, and it takes more people to guard us in building an airport than it does to build the airport. And the same thing's true. We could use hundreds of millions on economic projects if we could get them built.
Some people seem to think that we're just building it for the Viet Cong to take over.
Well, it could very well be. It could very well be. But I had the feeling from way Bill Fulbright talked, I don't know whether I sensed it or not, that the feeling on the Hill was that we ought to be doing more of that, and that might be a better answer than the bomb. Do you think that we ought to send all these troops without a debate?
No, sir. I think that we've got too many in there now, and We've been bombing the north without any appreciable results showing for us in the south.
But what do we do about his request for more men? Don't we have to, if it assumes the proportions that I can see it assuming, shouldn't we say to the Congress, what do you want to do about it?
Well, I would be hate to be the one to say it, because as you said earlier, it's 75,000, then it's 150,000, then it's 300,000. Where do you stop?
You don't.
Where do you stop?
You don't. I mean, it looks like to me, I don't see where to me, it's shaping up like this, Mike. You either get out or you get in. I think we've tried all the neutral things.